Today is Saturday, July 11th, 2026, and I am reading Why Does the World Exist by Jim Holt, Boredom by Alberto Moriava, Barbarians at the Gate by Brian Burrow, The Warburgs by Ron Chernow, I, Robot by Isaac Asimov, How to Talk About Books You Haven't Read by Pierre Bayard, Look at That, Discover the Joy of Seeing and Sketching by Bobby Harron, and Inventor of the Future, The Visionary Life of Buckminster Fuller. So, I think I'll start off with Inventor of the Future. I had read about this on the Wikipedia page before I read about it in the book, but Buckminster Fuller's central event in his life was, he claims for his life, this religious experience that he has, or spiritual experience, on the day that he tries to take his own life. The precursor to this is that his daughter had died 5 years earlier of pneumonia. She was about 4 years old. He had just had his second child with his wife, Anne. He had been fired or let go from a company that he basically helped start named Stockade with his father-in-law, and then he got pushed out, I think, because of some deals. It was kind of hard to follow a little bit the what happened to Stockade. But anyway, he's no longer a part of Stockade at this point in his life. And he's like kind of low on money. He feels that people would be better off without him. And so he decides that he could give his family the life insurance that he has by drowning in Chicago, basically. So he swims out and he sees this flash of light, and I'm paraphrasing, but the light says to him that his life is no longer his own, and if he's going to give up his life, he may as well give it to service for other people, as well as he speaks the truth, and he needs to basically, this will be relevant in a second, take down everything he says. So he tries to end his life, and then he kind of, has this religious moment, and then he comes back and he's like, okay, fine, I will dedicate my life to service. And I think, we're still getting into kind of like how that's going to actually play out. We're starting to see some of the, again, engineering aspects of his life pick up. There's a lot of mention of like dyno something, I forget the name of it, but I know that that's going to be important, and because he makes a car with a dyno in it too. But he started to write down everything that he thought. He started to create a new journaling formula for himself, basically, where he was just chronicling everything that would happen in his life. And I love this as somebody who emphasizes the value of a personal library. I think that writing everything down that a person does is a very, I don't know, it's become modern in a way where we're all vlogging, we're all uploading our thoughts constantly, but having a system upon which you're allowed to stream and save what you were and what you are and what you will be in a objective format is a powerful tool for reflection. It's a powerful tool for goal setting. It's a powerful tool for self-awareness, in a sense. And I wish that, journaling is such a powerful tool, but much like reading, if you don't come at it with a very certain perspective in mind of what you want to accomplish from it, you're not really getting out of it what you think you are, because of its abstract notion and because of its lack of kind of quantitative scoring. So I'm excited to see where Buckminster's life goes now that he's had this really spiritual experience. He ran into one of his old colleagues and wanted to tell him off and fight him, but then he decided not to, and he was like, wow, I'm free. I thought that I was gonna go crazy and hurt this guy, but now I'm just, it's fine. And I think that that's a good advice for anyone who's feeling frustrated with any certain position in their life, is that there's always more life to live, until there isn't, and then at which point you don't have to worry about your frustration either, right? Look at That, Discover the Joy of Seeing by Sketching by Bobby Harron. I just started this one. Right now she's just kind of going through all the materials that she uses to sketch. So she's talking about how to carry a watercolor set with you, what types of pens to carry with you, what types of pencils. Nothing so far that's kind of like stuck out to me. Other than that, she made a point about paper, which I thought was really interesting, where it's very obvious. She was like, you wouldn't use printer paper to wipe your tears. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess that there is the differences between paper materials is further apart than we think of when we're just like, oh, I just need to print something. And there's a bigger difference between a card stock, a 8x12 inkjet paper, and a piece of Kleenex, even though they're all made from different types of pulp, right? Wood pulp, cotton pulp, etc. So that's pretty interesting. My goal with this book, again, I'm just kind of getting started with it, is to start sketching more. I've never really been artistically active, especially in the realm of being able to draw something and feel like it's a good drawing. My drawings have never really struck me as good, but I want to get good enough to have a visual descriptor language, because there are some things that you can't say with words, and I'm so deep into words and programming too, to be honest with you, and I've thought about this multiple times. Maybe I could just learn shaders or something that's like a programming language that will still allow me to express myself with drawing. And a while ago I was like, oh, maybe I'll create this kind of sketching language that's like a programmatic sketching. And I would like to do that eventually too. But basically I just want to be able to create silly drawings with pen and maybe some watercolor. So to get to that point in my life. How to Talk About Books That You Haven't Read by Pierre Bayard. I'm really loving this book. Right now I went past the chapter about books that you've forgotten. So Montaigne is a writer from the 1500s who wrote the Essayists. He's the guy who actually made essays. I have a book about Montaigne on the wall here. I don't know which it is. It's one of these. I can't see from all the way over here. But anyway, by Stephen Zweig. And Montaigne is just such an interesting character. Like he's one of those guys that attracts royalty and rich people around him because they know that he's more interesting than them, but he like really can't care less, right? So he's just like locks himself in a room for years and then goes traveling on a horse and dies and has all these crazy adventures. He's a very adventure-based individual. But anyway, he has this anxiety, which is a real anxiety. This is a real thing, is that like we forget as soon as we read and we forget as soon as we write. I think that this is an important truth to hold in one's heart, is that if you read and you're frustratingly trying to slow yourself down artificially with the goal of, I'll just remember this if I slow myself down enough, that won't happen. Our brains don't work like that. They don't store information like that. Our brains are basically just reading these symbols, processing them, and then throwing them out, associating. So I don't think it's like worth it to kind of overemphasize memory. I think finding the right memory. Hold on, let me put my computer on do not disturb. I'm getting a text. I'm popular for once in my life. How do I do that? It's probably fine. I don't know how to do it from my computer with the keyboard attached. What was I saying? You see what I'm saying? I was talking about memory, and then I immediately forgot that I was talking about memory because I got sidetracked by a different context. Like short-term memory, long-term memory they're basically placeholders for the brain to try and remember an image to keep you alive. And it got co-opted by our current understanding of reading and thinking. And because of that, we have all these symbols and we're like, you're supposed to remember these symbols. It's going to be on the test or whatever. Or like half of those books, I like do not really fully remember what they were about on the wall there. And those are my 5-star books. That's like the Hall of Fame. And actually what I've been doing recently, which has been fun, is that I've been re-engaging with books by turning them into Anki cards and then taking those Anki cards and studying them. So that's been a lot of fun in its own way, to be able to kind of like take a cover and then try and remember the description of the book and then just practice that. So I recommend that. I wrote a GitHub repo that allows you to download Readwise images and turn them into Anki cards. And it's on my GitHub at github.com/Bramsies. And then just kind of like, how to talk about books that you've never even read, right? There's the social kind of construct of like, okay, you're going to be on stage, you have this dream, a nightmare perhaps, where you're forced to give a presentation to people and you don't even know what books that they're talking about, so you just start lying, you just start pulling shit out of your ass. And the illustration that he gave was that a lot of authors will share the same name, like the same last name. So this one guy who went up thought that they were talking about another author that he had read, but they're actually talking about someone who shares his last name. So he read the one who wrote these kind of like really crummy westerns, and they were talking about the kind of like famous writer one, the kind of Pulitzer Prize writing one. And I think that that's an interesting thing too, where it's like he describes this as a inner library, and your inner library keeps track of books that you've read, and then you use those books and cultural footprints basically to establish your relationships to books that are trying to enter your inner library. So if you tell an African tribe about Hamlet, they're going to have a hard time understanding the kind of dynamics of the relationships between kind of like widows and ghosts, for example, because there aren't ghosts in African culture, right? So, or in certain African tribal cultures. Haven't gotten further in iRobot, haven't gotten further in the Warburgs. Actually, I have, but I don't think that there's much interesting to say there other than just kind of the family is like kind of like, there's a lot of characters. They're all kind of sorting themselves out. And by characters, these are real people. But like, I think that it's still the Moritz versus the Sigmund branches. That fight is really starting to kind of like build attention, as well as we're getting into the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century, which is when German anti-Semitism really started to ramp up. And it kind of really, I guess, got really bad, of course, after World War I. It was always kind of on the back burner in like German culture, but then it kind of would go in waves, especially when, for example, the leader of Russia, or of Germany, who I'm blanking on his name now, the Wilhelm gave Jewish people their emancipation in Germany, and then the Gentiles weren't happy about that, and they kept trying to reclaim ground, and then they would blame, an outbreak of, for example, of cholera on Jewish people, which is obviously ridiculous. But like the son Max would keep going to work. That was actually an interesting thing, is that everybody was like dying. There was like thousands of people like the bring out your dead cards, and he was still just like going to work like da 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 da, like he thought he was basically immune, which is pretty interesting. Anything else? Barbarians at the Gate, not really. Boredom. Why does the world exist? I've just been thinking a little bit more about this question of why does the world exist, specifically as it pertains to information, where why does information exist is a kind of sub-question of the world existing. And I think that it's hard to differentiate between the two at the level of kind of philosophy, because it's at what point is something, I don't know, like empirically provable. Like, for example, the Big Bang, like Einstein he calls his biggest foible in his career that he denied through his own findings with relativity that the universe could have had a beginning, right? That was kind of something that was upsetting to him. And it wasn't until 30 years later, 20 years later, that the science became basically incontestable through cosmic microwave backgrounds, that they were able to find in space that, like, yes, the universe has a start. You can see certain photons, like 10% of the photons on the kind of noise on your screen on a TV are from the beginning of the universe, right? They're 13 billion years old. And I think that is something that is, scientists don't like the idea of there not being something. We're just people at the end of the day. And I think that information is one of those questions that I feel strongly about in the inner library, as it were, of the how to talk about books you haven't read, where it's like, how can I understand where information came from? What was the first piece of information? Does information spawn information, or is all information already out there like a library of Borges and we're just uncovering it? Is it all just permutations of existing information? And why do certain symbols appear in certain linguistic constructs where it's more utilitarian, but then in others there's nothing there? Something to think about.